Now, I normally try to bring y'all a wide variety of different metal for the top 5 every weekend, but this week it's going to be mostly death metal because for some reason the death metal was super strong this week. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's album art of the week. It's the weekend. That means we got new metal albums to talk about, and I'm bringing you my top 5 favorites. But before we jump into the top 5, let's talk about some of the big bands and the big releases this week. First up, there's a new record from Alt, A-L-L-T, from the New World progressive metalcore out of Sweden. I got my hands on this one early. Y'all know what that means. My written reviews already published in Metal Digest. Links in the description to all my writings. What I said about this one is as metalcore continues to evolve, a lot of the new bands are trying to incorporate electronics so they can sound like a dark pop sort of vibe. Well, this band is carving their own path. They're using the electronics to sound like a heavy machine dystopia. I dig it. And now let's switch gears. There's a new record from Windrose called Troll Slayer. That's right, the Diggy Diggy Hole guys have another record. And there's a new one from Texas hippie coalition called Gunsmoke, Southern groove metal out of, you guessed it, Texas. And then probably my favorite one from this week. This one's huge, y'all. Blood Incantation with Absolute Everywhere. And my colleague over at Metal Digest, Scott, probably said it best. It's like if Pink Floyd made a death metal record. And lastly, before we jump into the top 5, Converge put out a live album called Live in Orlando, and all the proceeds go to mutual aid funds for victims of Hurricane Helene. And today, as of this recording, is Bandcamp Friday, so all of the proceeds go. I'm not sure how it's going to work since this airs on Saturday. I'm not sure how it's going to work after Friday. That's why y'all should follow me on social media for the quick stuff like that. I hope still a good portion will go to Helene. I'm not sure. Y'all click on the link in the description and we'll try and find out. If I do find out, I'll pin the comment. But now let's do the top 5. All right, y'all ready for some death metal? Coming in at number 5. Infern, not to be confused with the tech death band Inferni. Infern, Turn of the Tide, death metal out of France. And some people will criticize new death metal bands and say they're engaged in bolt thrower worship. Well, to me, that seems like the highest compliment you could give because bolt thrower rules. Coming in at number 4, and speaking of bands that sound like the classics, Temple of Dread with God of the Godless. And I think any fans of death would appreciate this, and I think Chuck himself would appreciate this, because not only do they have that sound, but they also have that freedom. Chuck wrote songs about a lot of different subject matters besides just slashers and zombies, and this band does that too. They incorporate some Greek mythology, so not only is it reverential death metal, but it's also pretty clever too. Coming in at number 3. Let's break up the death metal a little bit. Here's 1349 with The Wolf and the King, black metal out of Norway. I love this one because they took it back to that 90s style of black metal. Now, what happened after the second wave is a lot of black metal bands tried to differentiate themselves by becoming grand and artistic. They brought in an orchestra or synths. Not this band. It's just the band, it's just guitars, drums, and screaming, but the technical playing and punchy production is heavy. It's kind of ironic that they stand out more than all of their peers in their grandiosity, trying to bring in extra folk instruments or whatever to make it sound huge. They sound, 1349 that is, sounds far more different by keeping it simple, but with highly technical playing. And this is not me diagnosing the black metal genre or writing some sort of prescription, because I don't think other bands could do what 1349 has done. It takes a high level of skill to play something simple and make it stand out. It's like a boxer. A boxer can only hit you with a left or a right. They can't throw any kicks. They can't take you down and submit you. It's either a left or a right. But the masters of boxing make that boxing look like magic. and regular people can't touch them. That's what 1349 did here. This is black metal magic. Coming in at number 2, Cosmic Putrefaction, Emerald Fires atop the Farewell Mountains. You guessed it, death metal out of Italy. This one's killer because if you're into that really nasty death metal, this is for you. And if you're also a musician or a music nerd, this is also for you. There's really subtle, intelligent choices done here. It's kind of like watching Hannibal Lecter kill somebody. You know you're watching something horrific and disgusting, but at the same time, you kind of respect the class and the upper crust distinction that he's performing this vile deed with. That's what listening to this record's like. And hey, before we do number 1, I want to talk about Hurricane Helene. So there's an option in YouTube that I've never messed with before, so I don't really know how it works at the time of this recording. But there's a way to raise funds for charity via YouTube. So I'm going to try to turn that on and figure out how it works and see if I can't raise some money for the victims of Helene. I don't know how it's going to work. I'll put it in the description or it'll be on the screen somehow. I know it's in YouTube. I've just never done it before. So I don't really know what to tell you what to do. I'll put something in the description. That's the best I can do. And if I do this again, next time I'll know and it won't be so awkward. But, I want to do something. I know y'all want to do something. This is normally where I hawk my merch, but, it feels a little weird. So, I don't know. YouTube, do something. Is there something on the screen here? I'll tell you. I'll figure out a way to let y'all know. Thank you so much. Now let's do number 1. Coming in at number 1, and this should be no surprise to those of you that know me, Undeath with More Insane, which is an apt title because their previous record, It's Time to Rise from the Grave, was absolutely insane, and this one is indeed more insane, coming from those kings of death metal from New York. Just absolutely killer, crushing, old school death metal, and groovy, just filthy grooves, and I really love the thudding guitar tone. Every time they hit that low E string, it just hits the speakers like that. Ooh, nasty. Just between Undeath and Blood Incantation, just such a phenomenal week for death metal. There's so many great bands this week. I listened to so many death metal records and most of them were absolutely incredible, with of course Undeath and Blood Incantation sitting at the top of that mountain. We're not even done with the killer death metal because we still got Dealer's Choice and Album Art of the Week. For this week's Dealer's Choice, I'm picking Valletta with Summer, Black and Roll out of North Carolina. Now, a lot of times when you hear the phrase black and roll, the band sounds like one of those greaser punk sort of rockabilly rock and roll bands, with the slicked back hair and the leather jackets and the white t-shirt with the cigarettes rolled up in the sleeve, maybe a toothpick in their mouth. Not this band. This isn't that old school rocker greaser punk sort of rock and roll. This is like some modern, heavy rock and roll. Just killer black metal vocals and themes. A lot of fun with this one. I love black and roll, and this band stands out even amongst those weird bands. Really killer. Check it out. Now let's talk about this week's album art of the week. My favorite album art this week comes from Maul, In the Jaws of Bereavement, death metal out of North Dakota. Where does one even play death metal in North Dakota? I want to know, and I want to visit, because this record is killer. It could have easily have been in the top 5. I just love this album art, but this one fits right in with all those death metal records I've already talked about, which is a feat and a compliment considering that this is the most stacked, probably the best week for death metal of 2024. Just listen to that lineup, and here you have Maul standing right there with their peers, just killer stuff, and I love this art. Check out this purple mouth portal about to suck in this wizard out of the ocean. I don't know what's going on here, but I think it's really cool, and I love the art style. I love the color scheme. You don't really see this very often in death metal for it to be so, it's not quite a pastel color scheme, but just bright, almost happy if it wasn't for the gnarly subject matter. this is a shining example of how to make it still have the death metal aesthetic, but stand out and look different. Absolutely killer stuff here. And speaking of gnarly stuff, on this week's podcast, I talked about places in the world where playing extreme metal is illegal and can get you jailed or sometimes even executed. I talk about some of the brave bands that are defying their governments. If you're interested in that, just click right here. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.